Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are at BMW UK to look at one of their latest releases, which is going to actually come out next year, and it's the brand new M240i, which is behind me. This one is finished in Thunder Night Metallic, and I'm quite excited about this car. Design wise, it's caused a bit of controversy online, but I actually think in real life it looks a lot better than most of the press pictures are portraying, and that has been a theme for the last year with a lot of the BMW products. So let's start looking at the design of the car, then I can talk about the powertrain and then finish off with the interior. So as I mentioned, this car is based on the G43 series, so it does borrow most of the tech and the chassis from that car, so it should be actually very good to drive. I have driven an M440i and an M340i, and they're actually very capable cars, and when I drove them before the M3 was out, I was actually slightly concerned at how much better the M3 and M4 would be, and M have really closed that gap between M3 and the M Performance cars, and I expect this one is going to do something very similar. So today we're not allowed to drive this car because there is a press embargo until some point next year, but let's have a closer look at the car itself. So the front of the car is obviously quite different now because we're used to seeing double lights or double icons on a BMW, and this only has one. And what that's meant to represent is something like a 2002, which only had one light on either side. They couldn't put one singular light in, so this is to represent a single light, where on the other cars you have a double icon to represent two lights. This front bumper is very angular and actually very sporty. It's got really nice sort of lip detail down here, and this triangle bit is very reminiscent of the M Vision Next, and I believe that's where that idea is borrowed from. The lines are very aggressive on the whole car, but the bumper especially, it's got this really nice crease coming down here, and this carries on over here to give the car a little bit more aggression. And the light has a very 3D effect to it because the line from the headlight actually carries out into the bumper, and then the light is set back. The grills, some of you will be very happy that there's not gone for huge grills. On this one, they are slightly bigger than normal, but it's the traditional sort of kidney shape, and they're not coming down to the bottom of the car. The grills are active on this, so they're the turbine style ones. They're flat, usually to help with aerodynamics, and when the engine needs extra cooling, they will open up. The bonnet on this car is actually quite long, and when you first see the car, it's quite reminiscent of like an old Z3 where you had a really long bonnet and you had a shorter back end. What's new on this 2 Series is the power dome, so that would normally be reserved for BMW M cars, but on this particular car they have actually put the power dome, and it's not only on the M240i, it is actually on every 2 Series from now on. And one of the reasons that's been explained to me why that's there, and I do like it, is because the bonnet is a lot longer. It is based on 3 Series. That is visually there to try and make the car look a little bit shorter and keep it in proportion. Moving over to the side of the car, I'll take a look at the wheels first. The wheels are actually very nice. They are a split 5-spoke design, lots of different details and angles. These ones are in two-tone, but you can have them in black also. They've got Michelin star rated tyres, so they're 245 35 19 on the front and 255 35 19 on the rear. It's got fairly large brake caliper disc setup, and these are also available in red or blue depending on what you like the look of. If we take a look at the side profile of the car, it's actually quite sleek, and I really like the fact that this window gap here is very narrow, and it's very reminiscent of the M2 and 1M. And as all the other M Performance cars that are coming out now, it does actually have M mirrors. These are finished in serum grey to match the triangle bits on the front of the car, but you can have them in all black when you go for the all black wheels. So this car, because of the wheels it has, it also then has those extra spats on the side of the car which give it a little bit of extra width. But overall I like the actual side profile of the car. It is quite reminiscent of a Z3 with a long bonnet and a slightly shorter back end. And one thing you also notice is the door handles are changing on modern cars, and they're now sitting flush rather than having a handle protruding out. And I guess that allows the designers not to have to put the handles in this line here, and they can kind of be more flexible with where they have that. Like the M3 and M4, G80 and G82, this also has the skateboard design at the bottom, so that is finished in gloss black in the cars. On this you don't notice it as much because the purple is slightly darker, but if you saw this on a Brooklyn grey car, it provides quite a lot of contrast. One thing that you may have noticed straight away on this car is the actual width of it. It actually does have wide arches, very reminiscent of a normal M2 F87, but this is what you would class as a lower model, and it already has wide arches. And I think that bodes really well for the M2, because from what we've seen on the spy shots, it's even wider than this. Looking at it in person, I would say that the front and rear arches are as wide as an F87 M2, so I think that does make the car look quite special. The previous generation non-M2 was actually quite slim, and then they really ballooned it out for the M2, but this is actually starting like that in the first place. Now the rear of the car is where the most controversy is in terms of its design, and I think that again the pictures haven't done it any justice whatsoever. The car actually is quite 3D and sculpted at the back, especially this rear light, and I think that's the detail that's lost when you see a picture. That light looks actually very flat, but it has a lot of 3D elements to it. And essentially what happens is this part of the car here sweeps into the light and remains the same going through here, and this part protrudes out quite a lot. And if you notice, this daytime running light here actually mirrors what we saw on the front headlight, but it's just inverted again to give that 2002 single light look to the back, or a representation of that. Again, just like the front bumper, the rear bumper is very, very aggressive. It has lots of details and lines carrying on. So you've got the reflector here, and instead of it just being inserted into the bumper, the line actually comes over here, and then you've got another crease going across there. And the rear diffuser is very aggressive also. It's finished in the same black gloss as the skateboard skirt on the side, and it does look slightly aftermarket, and that has been a theme on a lot of the cars now. They are putting a lot more aggression into the standard cars. The exhaust trim is finished in the same cerium grey as the back, and the boot lid also has a nice sort of CSL style kind of, it's not quite ducktail, but it has a nice crease there. It's almost like an integrated spoiler, and then they've put another spoiler on the top there. Stepping into the interior of the car, it's a very nice place to be because it is all lifted from the G20. But arguably the most important thing about this car is the powertrain, for me at least. And the car is running a B58 engine, which we know and love a lot, and it's running 374 horsepower and 500 newton meters of torque, tied up to a ZF 8-speed gearbox and 4-wheel drive. But the difference with this 4-wheel drive is, whereas in the N135i it's front-wheel biased, in this car, like the G20, it's rear-wheel drive biased, and this car also has a limited slip diff, so it should make for a very, very enjoyable and engaging drive. The car will accelerate 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, which is very impressive. If you think about the original M2, I believe it was around 4.4 seconds, so already performance-wise, this is going to be up there with the original M2. As I mentioned, the interior is a very nice place to be, and that was always a big bugbear for people on the previous 2 series and even the M2, but this does take it completely to a different level. These seats, I believe they are exactly the same as the seats we've got on our G80 M3. They look the same and they feel the same. Design-wise, there's some slight differences in terms of the stitching, but I believe they are exactly the same seats, which is a very good thing. A lot of people went for the carbon buckets, and I did actually like the design of those, but the normal M3 seats are actually very comfortable and supportive at the same time. The interior of the car has a lot of M designation, and it's done in a very subtle way. So you've got sort of the M stripes here, M in the door sills. You've also got it in the seat back here, and like on the F80 M3 competitions, it's also got it in the steering wheel. One thing which is really cool on these is actually the inside of the door. So I really love this design of the door handle integrated into the door itself, and you've got those triangles embossed into the back end of the door there to mimic the front triangles on the front bumper. This car also has the optional sort of M designation stripe lights here, which is very cool, and if you don't have that, these pinholes basically just carry on into that part there. But apart from that, the car inside is very nice. It's very G20. This looks exactly the same as what we've got in our F90, so you're seeing a lot of tech from the higher models filtering down into that. One thing I've noticed with this car is that this transmission tunnel actually feels a lot higher, so it almost feels like more of a cockpit. So the car does have back seats, but it is a small coupe, so we can't be too unkind to it. There's not a huge amount of room here. That's kind of a driving position I could just about deal with. My legs can just about fit in, and I'm touching the roof. It'll probably be fine for small kids. I think it's probably about the same size as the previous F87 M2, but I wouldn't personally know because I took my back seats out and put a roll cage in very quickly. Hope you've enjoyed this quick walk around the brand new M240i. It's actually the first M performance car I'm actually quite excited about, and hopefully we should be receiving one early next year. But while I leave you, let's see what it sounds like. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on. If you want to join the conversation, please drop us a comment below and we will do our best to respond to you. And if you're running out of things to watch, why don't you watch one of these two?